and welcome back to the Wine Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Heather Daenitz of Craft and Cluster, a wine photography and marketing consulting company based in Santa Barbara wine country. Today, we are talking with Katy and Tamara of Likely Story Strategies, a full-service business strategy firm based here on the Central Coast of California. Before we get into our conversation today about refreshing your wine brand's online presence, can you two please give us a brief outline of what you do, how you got into it? Start wherever you want to start.
Yeah.
Great. Katy, you go first, alphabetical order.
Well, so first of all, we finish each other's sentences often, and
true.
clients will see this when they work with us. But Tamara and I met working for another company, working on large brands that were internationally distributed. And through that, we found a kismet opportunity that we loved working with each other. And then two, we found that so many of our friends, local colleagues, wineries were like, how can I just get a piece of your knowledge? Can I ask you about this? Can we do this? And obviously, we knew that other wineries, they don't have marketing departments or they don't even have a marketing person. And they could use some help on a certain project or just getting back to foundation. And so in 2022, we founded Likely Story Strategies. And when we started, it kind of was more on the marketing business side of things, but we quickly realized that we are a full service agency and pretty much everything in relation to wine except for making the wine and growing the grapes. But we've dabbled in it all. And we realized that for these wineries, whether they're established or just starting out, or sometimes just a team of two or a team of three, and we could really bring a lot to the table, just enough to be dangerous and knowledgeable in different fields. So we kind of rebranded ourselves quickly, which is what we'll talk about here today too, as a full strategy firm, not just marketing. And then we dabble in things other than food and wine. So we've worked with like a T-Boba franchise. We've worked with a jewelry company, but we love to eat and drink and travel. So hospitality, food, beverage, and adjacent agencies are really our main game and focus.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but Katy, talk about like how you even got here in life. No?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to know?
In the
Heather?
industry?
Yeah,
Sure.
please tell me about that. I would love to know.
Okay, great. Well, I was born on a springy day. No, I'm just kidding. I was born in December, but I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. My parents did not drink wine, but my grandparents did. So it was around the table. They grew up lived in Reno, so they went to Napa all the time. But going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is really what accidentally got me into wine. I started as a math major, which would be funny to most, and then went to microbiology because I wanted to obviously star in CSI, and then did not love biochem. So I went over to a department that was not impacted, which was ag business, and luckily found wine. And I was a French minor throughout. And so it just naturally and accidentally happened, but the best happy accident. And then worked a majority of my career with Jackson Family Wines, both on the direct-to-consumer side and the wholesale market, international marketing side, as well as the sales side. I also did a short stint with Gallo on the sales side, and then worked with Presqu'île Winery and the Murphy family launching their D2C business. So a little bit of everything until we started Likely Stories.
Yeah.
I love that. Tamara, what about you?
Well, I am born and raised in Los Angeles, and a little corner of Los Angeles that's kind of Los Angeles, but kind of not, called Topanga Canyon. Growing up there and going to school there, I sort of fell into film and TV, which I feel like is what happens when you live there. You don't mean to. And I was working at Nickelodeon and came up to, yes,
I
that
didn't know that.
Nickelodeon. Yeah, sure was.
How fun.
Yes, and it actually was not quite as fun as everyone thinks it is. But I went when I was, I want to say like 24 years old to visit some friends that were living in SLO. Shout out Grace Cagle is still a winemaker to this day, and she was going to set up a wine tasting day for us, but it was during harvest. So she said, let's swing by my work real quick before we go tasting. I just have to do some punch downs. And we were dressed all cute, and she was wearing a dress and sandals, and she just hopped on the edge of they were barrel ferments. I didn't know that at the time. And she was doing punch downs, and I was like, holy shit, what is this job? What is life? And I basically was like, I'm going to quit my job and come move to wine country. And she was like, okay. And everyone basically said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did. So I quit my job in, um, 2011 and moved up to Paso Robles. My first job was kind of an everything person, tasting room manager, wine club manager, literally everything for a little winery in Paso Robles called Via Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working there for a while. And then I was like, you know what? Someday, even though I have a bachelor's degree, I would like to make a little bit more than $14 an hour. And so I decided to go to grad school and I got into Cal Poly's master's in business program. And so I was working full time and going to school full time. And it was definitely a unique experience because I knew that I wanted to stay in wine with my MBA. And so it was kind of fun to do school through that lens of thinking
Mm-hmm.
about how those things were applicable. And then after that, I moved to Texas, sold wine for a couple years for Francis Ford Coppola. After that, worked for a hot second for the Justin Fiji Landmark, wonderful company. And that was a very short stint. And then went over to J. Lore when I for a couple years on their marketing side. And then Jackson Family Wines, which is where I met Katy, and then Likely Story Strategies. So I've also done pretty much everything you can do in wine except make it. I have planted vines though,
Yeah.
and I can drive a forklift.
Yeah, it's much
Excellent.
closer.
That fork location.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
Mhm. Well, I'm not
That's awesome.
certified.
Yeah, you should
Well,
get that one.
I said I could drive. I didn't say I was certified.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
you do anything
Yeah.
with enough
Goals.
confidence.
Goals.
Exactly.
I love it. I didn't know any of that about you. I feel like so for context to the listener,
Yes.
Katy and Tamara and Tamara actually hired me for Jackson Family to photograph Cambria Winery, and that's how we all got involved in this.
Before that, you were
I know,
a model
a
and
model.
volunteer.
I was, yes, that's
You and
right. I was,
Nicole.
yeah. I helped out on a Cambria Wines shoot with Silas Falstich, I believe is how you
Yeah,
say
good
his last
memory.
name.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was helped out, modeled a little bit, which is always kind of a humbling experience for a photographer to get on the other side of the camera and be like, oh, I guess I need to actually know what I'm putting my subjects through. So
Mhm.
it's good. It's a good thing to do every once in a while.
For sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like getting like the tasting room staff into the winery for a day and just being like, do these punch downs and see what it's like. Cause yeah, you really have no idea. And vice versa. So what I would love is so we're going to talk a little today about branding, rebranding, all that stuff, which I think can be kind of a confusing topic for some wineries because like we assume that branding is it's just like label design or like the visual side of things, but what else can you define branding for us, for the plebs in the crowd?
I would say branding is basically any way that a brand interacts with a consumer. So it could be visual, but it can also be audio. We recently did a presentation that you were at, Heather, where we talked about audio cues like the bum bum from Netflix, and that's amazing branding. It's how people talk about your company. It's the voice and tone of your company from like whether or not you use emojis in your social media posts. It's every element of how your brand interacts with uh, existing and potential customers.
Yeah, and a key, which I know we'll get deeper, ideally to your branding obviously is unique to you, and you might not think that you have a brand except for maybe a label on your wine, but you have more than you think. So it's really about knowing your differentiators and doing the test of if I put somebody else's label name, brand name, winery name on top of this email, on top of this post, on top of this statement, could it be true for them as well? If yes, that's okay, but you probably want to dig deeper to try to figure out what your unique qualifiers are that you can continually repeat to the customer, right? I think the stat is you have to hear something, is it 7 or 11 times in order for it to stick, right? So if you're just hearing XYZ winery has wonderful vineyards, heritage, 95 plus point scores, and is
Family
from
owned.
family owned Santa Barbara County, that's being repeated to these customers a lot. So you need to find out your shtick and commit to it in all of your branding 360 degrees and all of the ways that you touch the consumer, talk to the consumer hears you, and then just be consistent in it, which will really pay off in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, where do you see wine brands making mistakes though in their branding? Like what are and are there some unusual touch points or touch points that are not commonly talked about that you would see improvement for the wine industry?
So
Yeah,
many.
so many. So,
So many.
a simple one is the consumer, you want the consumer to trust you, right? With such a crowded market in wine, or I mean, almost anything these days, the trust of the consumer, them trusting your brand and you holding that trust if they're already your consumer, again, will save you money and keep revenue flowing with less effort put into that relationship with the customer. So the more on brand you can be throughout, the better, because they'll know it's from you and it's from trust. So that can be anything, again, from having everything be the same on Google, your website, your Yelp, your Instagram, your Talk or Open Table. All of those touch points having the same logo, the same open hours information, the same contact information, the same sign offs, the same tagline, the same verbiage, knowing that, okay, this is something that that brand is owning. This is really them. It's like having the blue check mark to all of the things that you're touching for your customer. And then even the email signatures, we talk about that a lot in our presentations. And I'm sure people like, okay, that's too detailed. But with so many scams out there these days and you never know what's what, like it's nice to have a great branded email signature. You can still have your own personal identity so each of your employees feels ownership over their communication, but it does help with that continued branding and trust too.
And
Yeah.
that consistency is what helps rack up those 7 times that where it's going to stick in your brain. You know, Katy and I will use our own brand as an example, Likely Story Strategies. Imagine we are emailing you, Heather, as a new client, and you've asked us to help refresh a label or do an advertising campaign. And one time Katy emails you and one time I email you. And Katy loves Times New Roman and I love Comic Sans. And those are our email signatures. And I would never love Comic Sans. I just want to go on record as saying that. But
Papyrus.
yeah, Papyrus, even better. But even if you don't consciously realize it, you're going to be like, why would I trust these people to refresh the visual identity of something that can't even decide on the same font for themselves? So there's definitely, because people will tell us, you know, I'm not a designer, I don't know about that kind of stuff. You do, you know when it looks wrong and you know when it looks bad, and give yourself a little bit more credit. And that consistency is so key for earning the trust and keeping the trust of the consumer. And so just being more thoughtful about it, I think is the first step. I think it's so easy to be a little bit more thoughtful about how you're interacting with the world.
And
Yeah.
one thing that came up too in a recent presentation that we did up in Paso Robles was a question from a winery owner saying, that's great. I am thoughtful. I care, but how do I get my team members to care about it?
Yeah.
And so there's a balance of, and obviously it's hard for us to tell without being in your business and knowing and being able to help you diagnose where to improve or empower. So a lot of the times it can be about, you know, empowerment. Do they feel empowered to change things, to update things? A lot of it too can be about maybe being afraid to ask for the right tools, so therefore just not willing to do it. So Do they know how to use Canva? Have you built a brand kit within Canva so it's as easy as they make a flyer and they click a button and all of the color and copy is switched to your brand standards? Do they know what your color and your fonts are? Have you documented that for them so that they don't have to waste 2 hours looking for that information, one wanting to do some sort of promo post? So some of those things too, in case there are owners listening to this and be like, oh, that's great, I care, but I don't have time to do it. If you do have a team member that you think is interested, then again, investing in those tools and those materials and investing in them and giving them the tools to help care and implement the brand standards through those touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to, if we have a brand who's listening right now who is like, okay, yeah, but where do I start? Where would you suggest brands start when they're going through this brand refresh process? If they can hire you, if maybe they're not in a place to hire you, where would you start?
I would start with an audit. So that sounds like a scary word, but it's really just going through and doing a checklist of all your stuff. And Katy can show
And I'll
for our
share.
visual people
Mm-hmm.
and for the listeners, we can make some free tools available to you, however Heather wants to share those. But
Yeah.
basically, you have a lot more than you think you do. I don't care who you are. You have probably a logo, you have some things that are in some colors, you sell a product or a service, and you know what that is, you know how you describe it to people. So even just those things right there are the starting points for an audit. Because once you can sit down and define all those things at least once and at least for yourself, that's a huge jumping off point and a huge differentiator from anyone else. I mean, another way I'll frame it is you know, let's say you own a wine brand or a winery and you hired someone to come work in your tasting room and they did their own email signature or they put their own spin how to describe your winery in the tasting room. A little bit of that own spin is fine, but you didn't hire them as a designer, right? Why would they be designing their own email signature? Why would they be designing flyers? You didn't hire them to name your company. So it just is, again, going back to that thoughtfulness and how you interact and playing to people's strengths. But I think the first place to start is to just write it down. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like, oh, these girls love homework. They want to just make me do assignments. But I think that there's a certain amount of accountability that comes with even making yourself write something down, that if you even just say, oh, it's in my brain, I know it, it's not the same level of accountability. Until you write it down, there's no next steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for those listening, we're showing a monthly brand message audit, and later we can also share a calendar that we created for a full year to try to keep
Yeah.
yourself on track, where we recommend that clients literally put it in their Google Calendar, their Outlook calendar, to keep themselves accountable for all their different ways that they're communicating with their customers. So on here, we've got write your current stated brand purpose, target consumer, key differentiators. So that's where can you put another person's, brand in front of whatever you think your key differentiators are and it still be true. Okay, well, we got to dig deeper and figure out what yours are. Brand voice, 3 adjectives. And then we go into channel audit where you're essentially scoring yourself on these pillars to see how they are on your website, first 100 words, because people don't have short time spans and a very small screen. Social media, email marketing, customer service dialogue. So whether that's on the phone, if you don't have a tasting room or in a tasting room. And then what your score is this month. It has what your score was last month, what the trends are. Are you going up, down, staying the same? And then action items, and then again, your next audit date on the bottom. So holding yourselves accountable for maintaining your brand standards.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think that's a good place to start. And then to Tamara's point, writing it down once won't really do anything. It'll give you a gut check, but that's where you start. And really putting together your brand guidelines is the biggest thing you can do. So documenting your mission, vision, value statement, putting together your colors, putting together your fonts that you use, what you do say, what you don't say, what's kind of like in the gray that works for you. Do you use emojis? Do you not?
Mhm.
Do you use contractions? Do you not? All of
Yeah.
those things seem really nitpicky, but they matter, and a couple stats to support that they matter. So you could reduce your consulting costs, like any of us, by 30%. Your copy approval time, if you are the owner and you have people that are multitasking, GMs in your tasting room doing email and hosting, your approval time could go down from a few weeks to a couple days, or a couple days to an hour, because it's on brand, because they have a Bible of sorts to go to. You also will get social content calendar time probably in 50%. And the biggest thing is you will cut costs. You will save money. You will probably retain employees because everybody's walking the same walk. Everybody gets brought on the same way. If you're a winery owner and a winemaker, then you've probably got your wine lingo down. You know your wine inside and out, how to train and onboard your tasting room staff on your wine, but onboarding them on your brand is equally important.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. As a social media consultant, one of the first things I do when I onboard a new client is I ask them for their brand kit. And if they don't have one, it takes us so much more time. And I
For
actually
sure.
account for that in my fees to them. So yeah, it
Yeah.
literally will save you money if you have a brand kit like ready to go and to pass off to whoever is, if you whether you hire an agency like mine to run your social media or do your marketing, or you have somebody internally doing it. It saves you time, it saves you money, all of the things. I mean, yeah, it's super, super important. And it helps me a lot when they have a brand kit ready to go. One of my clients, Brave and Maiden, to this day, they are the only ones that have like a fully built out brand kit that they were able to pass off to me and be like, this is how, we do use contractions when talking. We use an M
Yeah.
dash a lot, where our voice is wry and like a little sarcastic, and it just makes it so much easier for me to do my job, and it saves me a ton of time when I'm doing my monthly
Well,
content
and you'll
calendar.
see that in their social media.
Mm.
It'll be on brand, right? So it'll be what you see on social media, will be what you expect when they answer the phone, will be what you get when you go to the tasting room, will be
Mm-hmm.
what you receive when you get home and get that shipment, right? So the entire customer journey that's, your brand is the center of,
Mm-hmm.
actually has those spokes that all talk to each other already. So not one thing is out of alignment, which again brings them in, makes them trust, and hopefully keeps them in the fold.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I have another question for you. Kind of while we're on the topic of brand voice, brand identity, and all of that, how do you approach defining a brand's identity and their voice and their like the words that they use and things like that when you're taking on a new client?
Well, we audit first. Like we follow our own advice. So the first thing we'll do is you kind of, if and when you hire us, you can't give us too much information. Even if we're lucky enough to have a client that hands us a brand guidelines, which, as Heather mentioned, is very rare,
It's
unfortunately.
so rare.
It's so rare. Even if they do have that, we'll still comb through their last 100 social media posts. We'll still read every single landing page on their website. We'll ask for the last couple months of email marketing campaigns. We just read and consume everything we can so that we can start to see the through lines of differentiators because they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's no one that doesn't have that. It's just that maybe they don't know how to articulate that. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same as if I, okay, this is a perfect example. If I told you guys that I was a white lady with brown hair, you wouldn't know which one of the three white ladies with brown hair was on the screen right now. But we're all very different people.
Yeah.
So it's just like you got to take all the info in to be able to really capture what makes a brand different. And so you have to be willing to invest the time and the energy.
Yeah.
And if you aren't good at looking within, then which most people, again, it's hard because you've been running your winery 25 years or you're a startup
Yeah.
and there's nothing to explore yet.
Right.
That's when we get to do, again, what we consider fun exercises, usually over food and wine. So we do make it fun.
Yeah.
But where we run you and it's really key to have any stakeholders there as well. So not just winemaker owner, but your GM, your parents, your kids, like whatever your spouse, like whatever the mix is of whoever is going to be knowing this brand, consuming this brand, referring this brand, key stakeholders. It's really fun to do it with everyone because it brings, again, to Tamara's point, different storylines that they might not have thought about out. What celebrity would you be? And this is going to sound totally kitschy, but all of a sudden, like people get stumped. They're digging deep. Non-beverage brand would your brand be, right? Would it be a Four Seasons? Would it be like a Volvo, a Volkswagen, like, and why, right? Like, what's the reasoning why you chose those things? What musician or band would it be? What athlete would it be? So we ask all of these things and people get into it. It brings your guard down and then they're bringing it in. Oh, it's because this genre is inviting. Everybody loves it. Everybody gets into it. And that's our wine. It is inclusive. Everybody's there. Or again, I think it's the Four Seasons because they never leave anything unthought of. Like everything is always taken care of before I can even think about it. And that's what I want to do for our customers is I want to, again, like know their needs and deliver before they even ask. And so like looking through those answers, then we develop or we reevaluate their mission, vision, and value statement, which become the pillars that we all agree on and or tweak to feel really good about them. And from there, everything else gets built. Again, whether it's branding, whether it's photography, whether it's website, language, it all revolves around those pillars of finding your brand voice and visual identity. And it's great to find inspiration from other places, which we talk about all the time. It's great to find inspiration from other wineries. That's wonderful. But really, usually we're talking to our clients about brands that they interact with outside of the industry. Especially if we're talking about customer service, we're like, okay, what's your favorite hotel? What's your favorite restaurant? Why is that your favorite restaurant? What do they do that you go back every time? That's consistent. So we try to, again, make about it broader, like, why are you a loyal consumer to XYZ? And then how do you bring those aspects and make sure that they become a pillar of your brand if they're important to you?
Yeah. And also I don't want to be a bummer, but the wine industry is really struggling right now. And just if you say that sentence, then why would you look at other wine brands? Look at benchmark yourself against stuff that's doing incredibly well. Benchmark yourself against the best ad you've seen from a gummy vitamin company or makeup or perfume or a sports team. Everyone is branding, everyone is marketing. Don't compare yourself against everyone else that's sort of head and hands, woe is me right now. You can't figure out why would you do that? Look at people that are doing things well and flourishing, and that's what's going to lift us all up. So I think that will also give you a little bit more hope that, capitalism is alive and well and people are still out here buying products.
Yeah, that's such a great point too, because one of the things that I do regularly is when I feel like, and I think you guys can relate to this as a marketer, it's really hard for me to turn my marketing brain off. And so when I'm going out to eat or when I'm staying at a hotel or whatever, I'm noticing all of the things that they're doing that I like or that I don't like, or the things that they're doing really well or that they're not doing well or that they could do better. And I'm like processing all that information and then like spitting it out, as what this could be for the wine industry. So recently I went to, I think it's called Momotaro Ramen in Paso Robles. It was everything about their hospitality and everything. It was so well done. I actually just wrote a Substack post about it and what the wine industry could learn about it because it was so well done. Like, I mean, I find that Japanese food, Japanese cuisine, just like wine, can be really intimidating if you're not well versed in it. And kind of the biggest difference that I found was that every time I've gone to like a sushi restaurant or a ramen place, like any sort of Japanese restaurant, I've never once felt condescended to when I've walked in. Like they've always been so like hospitable and welcoming and not making me feel silly for not knowing, what certain terms mean, because it's literally a different language. And I think that we in the wine industry kind of forget that we're speaking a different language for a lot of people. A lot of it's in French,
I
whatever.
was just
Anyways,
gonna say it is
yeah, it's
literally
like
a different
again,
language
literally
a
a
lot of the time.
different, yeah. And one of the things that I really loved that they did was just even on their website when I was just checking it out before going to eat with them is they had they had their menu, but then they had a translations tab. So I went over and clicked on it and it was all of the definitions for the different terms that they were using. And that was my very first impression of them, was this super helpful thing that made me as a consumer feel really confident. And so, so just this little side tangent there that yes, look outside of the industry because it can be really, really enlightening to find things that you can apply to the wine industry. So,
And also, speaking of never being able to turn off your marketing brain, that's very much Katy and I, and also because we're business partners and basically life partners. We do almost everything together every week. We do a lot of eating together, traveling together. I think that people forget the beginning and the end of the sales funnel, as we in the business call it, but you could just call it the consumer's experience with your brand. I think that a lot of people forget that when you upload your logo to Talk, there's like an automatic survey that gets sent after you leave. So one might argue that's the last thing they're going to see that they interacted with. And if you uploaded a super low res JPEG because you didn't have time that day, and you're never getting the confirmation emails because you work there, it's going to take someone like a Heather, a Katy, or a Tamara who's hyper observant. And we literally, like, we are marketing fairies, for lack of a better term. We're just like, we're going to do this person a solid and re-forward this talk to the info at email address because they got to not know that this is pixelated or whatever it might be. Like,
It was
I
a
remember,
spelling error.
yeah, last year at a conference we were at, we were flipping through a program and there was a spelling error in a print ad. And we just snapped a picture and emailed it to the info at, just like, hey guys, just like out here doing a solid for another marketer. Like, did you know there's a spelling error in your, but it's just stuff like that that's constant. And
it was not an
people,
intentional Coors Light one.
no,
It was not a good marketing gimmick. It was an
yeah,
actual oops,
yeah,
humans. Humans still are involved in
yeah.
things, so errors happen.
Yeah.
Do we think that was intentional?
I
think
do.
that was a gig. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that was very
I think it was a
intentional.
good one.
They knew.
It
Yeah.
was really
very,
good.
yeah. They did it very well.
Yeah.
Case of the Mondays, which we all have.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, Heather, like I remember when Tim, my husband, and I were thinking about like starting to have kids and everything else, we literally had a share iPhone note of like parenting not to do.
Mm.
And like kept that as like, okay, these are our goalposts. These are things that really like rub us the wrong way when we're around other parents or, kids. And so we're going to hold ourselves accountable no matter how tired we are to stay like not let the lazy parent in, as we say, of like stay invested in this game plan of these boundaries or what have you. So again, I think like back to branding and like relation to parenting, if you will, but it's the same thing. So if you're out, and again, maybe you'll listen to this and it'll be stuck in the back of your head. And the next time you're out at a restaurant or at another wine experience or a hotel, maybe you do just have a iPhone note that's yours or shared with your business partner or whatever it might be, your GM, that you guys just put it in the moment. Like, don't make it a project. Like, have a shared note and you can just have one that's to do's, not to do's, loves, don't loves. And then those can make their way into your brand plan, into your guidelines as key pillars of customer service, customer journey, language, whatever it might be. But to your point, can seem like really daunting of like, where do you start? And it's,
Mhm.
we also talk about like relating this to working out. Like you just start somewhere. Like
Yeah.
you've got to use your muscles, you've got to train them, you've got to keep going, and your core will get stronger and stronger, and everything else will grow with it. So just start somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah. Don't do the
Yeah.
brand equivalent of just saying you're going to start on Monday every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
do, call
Yeah.
us and
Yeah.
we'll
Yes.
kickstart it for you. I mean, that's like some of the people, it's like, man, like I've been saying I'm going to do this for 6 months. It's 6 months later. So I just need someone to do it for me because I know I'll make more money, I'll save money, and I can then like focus on bigger strategy things because this one errand will be out of my head and like not errand, but task will be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I find that some people just need space created for them. So I offer monthly social media consulting and which is a done with you program versus a done for you. And I find that we end up using the 1.5 hours that we hop on a call, just creating space to make those posts. These people that I'm doing this for are capable of doing it themselves. They just don't make the time themselves. And so having a standing meeting that's on their calendar once a month to get together with this person who can just guide them where, I can sort of nudge the ship in the right direction if I feel like it's going a little off topic, or they can ask me questions or whatever. But for the most part, they're in there creating the content themselves. They just needed somebody to sit them down and do it. So yeah.
Just like I pay a personal trainer because I will not work out at home.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Well, and also
Yep.
it's so hard, even if you're the most creative person in the world, it's so hard to be creative in a vacuum. We were
Hmm.
just talking to a friend and colleague who recently started her own agency, but she started it alone, and she's one of our favorite people, one of the most creative marketers I've ever worked with. And she just kept feeling like she was hitting her head against a wall because she doesn't have a business partner to just bounce ideas off of. Katy and I and one of our colleagues, Kelsey, that we've worked with forever, have just a shared iPhone picture album. Like if we're out and
Hmm.
about, we'll just take a picture of cool packaging or t-shirt, anything that inspires us. And you wouldn't believe how often when we're working with a client, we go back to it and we're like, oh, remember that shirt we saw somewhere? It could
Hmm.
be like that shirt or like whatever it is. You never know how inspiration is going to help you down the line. And just like, don't be hard on yourself if you feel like you just cannot think of social media content sitting alone in an office. Like, why would
Hmm.
you? That's horrible.
Yeah.
So go talk to someone, buy someone coffee to just like bounce ideas off of that. It's just really hard to be creative on your own.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. As somebody who works alone, it is extremely hard. And so I love, being with you two, and then
yeah.
also with the clients that I have that perform the best online. We're collaborating all the time. I mean, Riley from Foxen, she and I have we have a group chat with everybody else, kind of the other stakeholders at Foxen, that we kind of do our official nonsense with. And then we have our sub chat between her and I on social media where we just share videos back and forth that we're like, oh, this would be a cool idea for Foxen, or this would be maybe this idea, but tweaked a little bit because we don't like the message that this is sending, but we like the idea behind it. And so it's so great to have that, to bounce ideas off each other. I 100% agree. It's so good. Now, kind of getting a little bit left of what we were talking about, going back to our earlier conversation, speaking of Foxen, for brands that have been around for a really long time, maybe they've been around for 10, 20, 30 years, and they have this sort of established identity, but they know that it needs a refresh, modernize without losing that core identity, the thing that kind of made them famous, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of options, but we like to, when working with like designers, again, assuming that they'll be working with a designer, we like to start with design spectrums,
Hmm.
which obviously let's assume we've already met, we've gone through all of their brand pillars, we've done all of our discovery, and we feel like we have a good idea of where they've been and where they want to go. So all that's already happened. Then we like to work with designers, either their existing one or bring in one of our preferred vendors, and start with a design spectrum, which really gives you a range of like safe, this is the existing, and then like wildly out of the box, and examples all in between, and figure out where their true comfort zone, which might be hard if you have a lot of collaborators and stakeholders in it, but it opens up the dialogue of like, okay, where are your comfort zones for us to design within? And then once figuring out those comfort zones, then again, we usually, depending on if it's a full label refresh or just slight tweak, we'll come up with some inspo photos and inspo board, again, usually around themes. So like typography or iconic logo or paper or again, like color, right? It's like all the different themes that go into a label. And again, kind of get their temperature, like, okay, we're playing within design spectrum. Here's your temperature within these areas of the label. And then from there, ideally, again, come up with some redesigns or slight tweaks and updates that we show them separately, that we show them on one page together, that we show them in a competitive set. So if their wine is distributed, then like based on where your wine is in a shelf, here's how it's going to look on the shelf next to your neighbors. And it can be, you don't want to lose your brand identity. You know, obviously we've worked with large brands that have very large global distribution. And so we've done a lot of those as well, of like either slight tweaks or total package changes. You just, if you're committing to the full package change, then you go for it. And you just realize that you might have a slight dip in the market for a little bit while people refine it.
Yeah.
And ideally, they don't. Ideally, you are working with your sales team and you've got all your marketing in place, that you've created shelf talkers, you've created neckers that say, you know, same great wine, new package, and it has the storyline, again, back to the branding, it has the storyline of the unique identifier as to why, right? We're a multi-generational winery. This is the next generation coming into it, and we're so proud that we worked, you know, with the past to honor it, and then coming into the future, this is now ushering in. Or, you know, again, like we've been around for 30 years and maybe it's not a generational story, but just like times have changed. You're probably still not wearing 90s jeans, or maybe you are because they've already come back. And so we've updated our style, right? So you can have fun with it. And the consumers are smart. Just tell them and bring them along for the journey. Send out an email, put it straight up on your website, put it on your social media, like make campaigns about it that are touching all of your consumers everywhere that they are. Let your club members know first. Your loyalist people should know it's happening before they see it anywhere else. But what else, Tamara? But that's.
I mean, I also think that, I mean, not everyone's a brand marketer, I understand, but give a quick Google to some brand refreshes, or every single brand on the planet, big ones, have to do this every couple decades. They have to. I have a book on my desk, shout out Designing Brand Identity, and there's like pages in here of, you know, huge, huge brands that have just done slight tweaks, like Chobani, Burger King, Open Table. They just, the there is still there, but you know, fonts can be trendy, colors can be trendy. Sometimes you just have to do a little bit of an update. It doesn't mean you've changed your ethos or your mission, vision, values, and it doesn't mean you have to either. It just means that now it looks a little fresher. It's like a little facelift, for lack of a better term. So I would give it a Google just so that you can get a little bit comfortable with the fact that everyone on planet Earth that has a visual identity has to do this sometimes, and not be as scared as I think some people can be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I like the idea of building in public too. So as you're going through the brand refresh, you are sharing the behind the scenes of that on your Instagram stories, on your TikTok, on those places. Even in your regular feed posts for your social media. I think people like to see that. They like to know what you're doing because they're curious about it. And I feel like it also gives them a little bit of buy-in to the new brand, and they get excited about it and they want to celebrate you. So yeah, I like that idea as well. Doing
Yeah,
that,
and
building in
someone
public.
that's done a really good job of it too. I'm a big basketball fan, but the Warriors and the WNBA team up at Golden State, they do a great job when they have a new jersey come out or a new design come out or the logo come out, that they have either promo video, usually it's a combination because again, people take information in different ways, or again, like in their email, it's pointing at each part of the logo and why it was chosen and what it represents. Then you become invested in their journey. And I think that versus just seeing a logo change, again, it goes to that trust of like, well, what happened? Did they change the
Mm-hmm.
recipe? Did the owners change? Where's what happened? Versus again, them being like, oh, I knew this was happening. We're so excited for your unveil. And
Yeah.
they're bought in, they're part of it, right? And then they start educating people about it too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I love that.
Also, I realized I was being a little bit of a Pollyanna and I gave all the good examples of brand refresh. It does warrant a little bit of a fair warning that because Katy and I have also worked for brands that went a little, speaking of basketball, went a little too hard in the paint and they were like, we're gonna change everything.
Mm-hmm.
That is scary too. Don't do that because you need to really, like when Katy said, let's assume that we've done all of our due diligence, our brand discovery. In that process, hopefully you're really crystallizing where your brand equity sits. Is it in the name? Is it in the place? Is it, it sits in your differentiators. And so when you recognize your differentiators, don't change those.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you really are, hanging your hat on being family owned, don't then pivot your messaging to being like, and our board of directors is, or I don't even know. No one would say that in actual marketing.
If let's use Chobani for example. If your star flavor is strawberry banana, don't rename it to red and yellow. If that holds a high weight of purchase, leave strawberry banana prominent on the label. So to use a non-wine example for safety, but like we want to have the brand equity still stay there. And then also don't change everything at the same time. So if you're thinking of changing price, if you're thinking of adding a new flagship varietal that you want to distribute or changing your wine club structure, there's a change chart that everybody can Google if they haven't had that training before. It is awesome. I think about it all the time, and it helped with a multi-group ownership too of going through a change because you realize that people are at different parts of the graph, right? Some people just jump to acceptance and ready to execute. Other people go through denial, fighting it. This can't be happening. Okay, I guess it's happening, sorrow, and then accepting. Like there's a whole journey. And some people take time, get faster and slower through it, and consumers are the same way. So yeah, just pick what's important to change and plan your calendar. Like you can still do all those things, but give your consumers time to absorb it all and phase it out so that it doesn't seem so scary for them.
Yeah. And because marketing is as much a science as an art, I do tell people, everything that Katy was just saying, I couldn't agree more with. And you need a control in your experiment because if you change everything at once, your sales will decline, people will stop following you, and you won't know which thing did that. You won't know if it was the price or if it was the new name of your strawberry banana flavor or the logo. If you responsibly change a little bit at a time, then you can isolate which variable and then, hopefully you'll also isolate the one that landed the uptick in sales or landed more followers on social media, whatever it might be. So be a responsible marketer and don't try and rip a band-aid on too many things at once. That's no bueno.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So can you give me some examples of brands, wine brands, non-wine brands that you think do branding particularly well?
Sure can. We love talking about that. If we want to start with wine, we were talking about this a little bit before. The one that I tell everyone that I use as really just like the high watermark of branding, advertising, execution across all channels has and always will be, I think, Veuve Clicquot, because everybody knows that orange, everybody knows that font. They're really selective about the sponsorships and partnerships that they partake in. Like, I think everybody knows that they have polo parties, and maybe not everybody, but they have this, they're so good at marketing that they can somehow occupy this unique space of being, if nobody knows anything about champagne, the champagne you order on a wine list, but they
Mhm.
also somehow can be sold at Vaughn's, and it's just as cool because you're like, yay, they carry Veuve at Vaughn's. So this is what responsible marketing looks like across all channels, in my opinion, when it's executed incredibly well.
Mhm.
And they do it again, like obviously out in events. Obviously, they have a giant budget. We're very well aware of this, but
Mhm.
they had to start somewhere too with their brand pillars. And then their brand pillars and their brand guidelines dictate everything that they do, including out in market, including when they host events. There are brand standards that are withheld. So if you're sales reps throughout the country are hosting events for you, like having a small event kit that you can ship that has a tablecloth, corkscrews, your stickers, your pours, whatever, your display things, whatever it might be, with a return label that they can send back. So you're not, making 50 of them.
Mhm.
But that way you know that that brand consistency is out there. And then Las Jarras is another one that we like, which again is a more boutique brand and a younger brand, but their marketing is and their branding is really consistent and vibrant throughout all of the things they do, including their merchandise, which is really fun and again on brand. So it's not just wine merchandise, it's things that they as humans working at the winery are wearing or cooking in or participating in. And sorry for those that are just listening, I'm showing the websites, so go check them out when you can. And Las Jarras is LASJARAS wines.com. And then Veuve Clicquot, you could Google and spell really incorrectly, and their SEO is amazing, so you'll find it. But
It'll still come up. Yep.
anyway, those are just some brands in the wine world that we love. Their
Yeah.
consistent branding across their channels and social media and everything else.
Mhm.
And then for non-wine brands, I think we each have ones. I mean, obviously a pillar epitome, which most winemakers wear, but is Patagonia. You
Mhm.
know what they stand for, you know what they mean. They have a quality product, they stand behind their qualities with guarantee. You go to their website, you go to their stores, everything is consistently marketed in the same way. So I think Patagonia is always a gold star too of
Mhm.
branding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a super gigantic scale, I always use Nike as an example too, especially when people don't understand brand marketing and the nuance of it. To back to my earlier point of like, you may not know it, but you know when it looks wrong. We
Mhm.
all know what the swoosh looks like. Nobody at Nike is making a flyer and then the swoosh doesn't fit so that they then slightly rotate it so that it does, right? Like then it wouldn't be Nike anymore. So same with your logo. I've seen so many examples of like, oh, well, within the confines of this event flyer or what, like my logo doesn't look good in this color, so I'm gonna explore this color. It's like, no, that's not allowed. You can't
Mhm.
we can't do that. And when Nike does do that, they do it responsibly, like the swoosh will be pink during breast cancer awareness month or whatever it is, there's a why behind it and it's really thoughtful. I know that's a really big one. So let me think of a
But
more.
we were watching the Heath Ledger movie, A Knight's Tale. I don't know if you remember that
Oh,
with our
Yeah.
6-year-old the other night.
love
And
that
there's this
movie.
scene Yeah, where the woman blacksmith is doing her like lighter armor that she swears is as strong. She just found another way to do the metal. And she puts two little Nike swooshes on it. And I'm like, what's
Mm-hmm.
that? And she's like, it's my branding in case another knight should admire this and want it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, yes, girl, it is your branding.
Yeah, get after it.
Yeah, that's cute. Oh my
I
God, I
mean,
don't
technically
remember
you
that.
stole it,
Oh my God,
but
I love that.
you branded your stuff. And obviously, like, there's a lot of like inside jokes in that. And Jackson's like, why are you laughing? And I was like, oh, she's just doing a great job.
Excellent marketing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I love that. Yeah. I think something just as you were sharing for the listeners, as you were sharing your screen, like even your Google Chrome bar was your likely stories colors. So I thought I was very impressed by that. Thought I should share that
Thanks.
I would
Yeah, I
notice
luckily
that.
picked like a forest fir green color scheme, if
Mhm.
you will. And luckily, a lot of technology has that as options or phone cases. Like my iPhone is literally our brand color as well.
Yep,
So it
same.
must have been subliminal messaging from everything we were surrounded with of
Mhm.
Yeah.
why we chose it, but we chose well.
Yeah. I love it. It's good. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, we're kind of getting down to the wire here. So, the way that I like to end these podcast episodes is I like to ask you to give one thing that people can do today to improve whatever we were talking about. Do you have any quick branding fixes that wineries can implement immediately to improve their presence? Or is there something they can do like within an hour, within 5 minutes, whatever, something they can do today to just make things better for them?
I would say audit.
Yeah.
Today is your audit day,
Yes.
Mm.
whether it's you or a team member, or you pick a family member that's retired and have them go and be like, I want you to tell me what's different about my information on these key touch points, right? So Yelp, your website, your social media, your emails,
Your Google listing.
your Google listing. Oh, and look, is your name right? Is your logo right? Is your information right? When you go and Google it and it pops up and there's, like the four little sub tags, do those make sense? Is that where you want people to go? Are your hours right? Is your phone number right? And then when you're on your website, which is the biggest place you should audit, you go down to the bottom. Are all of the footer links correct? Does Instagram go to Instagram or does it go to Square? Do you have a Twitter? If not, or X, please remove the logo. Go through all of the things that a consumer might get lost in the journey before they've gotten the chance to meet you, before they've gotten the chance to try your wines. That is your biggest opportunity, is to do an audit. And then I think, again, obviously I know this is audio and visual, but just to share one last thing is again that calendar. So it's not
Yes,
necessarily
please.
obviously what you're going to get done today, but what you could do today. And again, Heather, in whichever way, we're happy to share this, but
Yeah.
you could sit down for 15 to 20 minutes today and schedule these things. That could be your accomplishment today, is you put them in your calendar, you invite your person to hold you accountable. So you make it a two-person meeting, so that you both show up and you get it done together, which will make it more fun. Bring a snack.
Yes.
But this breaks it up into all the months, all the touch points. There's even a section if you get off track, review your last completed audit, do a quick scan of all channels, capture current. So we know that life happens. We get off track too, but it just matters that you start again. So it breaks it out by month, by quarter, by channels, and it gives you actionable things to go do and check. So it seems more attainable in bite-sized chunks versus a large, all-consuming project.
Yes, I love this.
Mine are way more granular, but you would be surprised. When was the last time you looked at your own website on a phone? Please go do that
Mm,
immediately.
yes. Yes.
Number two, do you subscribe to your own MailChimp? Are you a test wine club member in your own wine club? Are you receiving the emails? Have you forwarded one recently? Because you would not believe how many times Katy and I go to forward each other things because we're inspired by it. and it wonkifies the formatting so much that now we're typing in white on black, and I'm like, what's happening here? And everything gets, so just double check your stuff, your own stuff, because I think even, let's say you have a marketing professional, you're one of those lucky wineries that has like a dedicated marketing staff person, probably through no fault of their own, because it's literally their desk job. Every time they're interacting with this stuff, they're on a big desktop computer that's optimized for all this like great graphic stuff. But I would say 75+% of your consumer is not interacting with your brand in that way. And so please just like dot your own I's and cross your own T's today if you do nothing else.
Yeah.
And then send yourself a calendar appointment to fix it. So if you only have 20 minutes today to look at things, it's going to suck if you know it's wrong. And then 2 months later, you still know it's wrong and you didn't block out an hour to fix it. So do that part too.
Yeah. And then if you really, really can't figure out how to fix it, you can call us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll also add to that, make sure that you're looking at your emails and your website on both iPhone and Android products. Because the mobile experience is quite different on both. I'm thinking specifically I run emails for Brave and Maiden, and we had a template that we were using that would set, if you looked at it on the desktop, you would have like a photo to the right or to the left, and then like text to the right, and then like another photo to the right, and then a text to the left. And so they'd be like the photos and the text would be sort of staggered. And then what it was supposed to do on mobile, which it did for iOS, was it would move the photo to the top and then the text to the bottom. But it wasn't doing that with Android. It was making it look like the email, but then because it was like squished into this, mobile frame, it looked really fucking weird. So we ended up having to basically nix that template altogether because we couldn't find a way to fix it. MailChimp, please fix that. It was so annoying. And so, so just things like that. It's like things that I wouldn't even have thought about because I use iOS products. My client uses Android products, and thank God we were both kind of, sending these emails back and forth to each other so that we could check them. And he was like, this looks fucking weird. And he would screenshot it and send it to me. And in a way, if you don't have access to an Android, at least for emails, is you can get the Google or Gmail app on your phone, and that will show it the way that it looks on Android. So just as that, but I don't know how
that's a great hack.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but if you can, make sure that you're also finding a way to, even if you just get yourself like a cheap, like burner Android phone or whatever, or like an old iPhone if you are an Android user, just to look at it and look at your website, look your emails and everything on both formats.
I feel like everybody has an uncle or aunt these days that has an Android.
Yep. Yeah.
Just ask to borrow it for a second.
Yeah, for a minute I was sending them to my stepdad because he has an Android. Yeah, I was like, can you just screenshot this for me and tell me if it looks weird?
Do you work with Klaviyo email platform at all?
I don't, but I'm working on encouraging my clients to.
Yeah, because we're working on it with a couple clients, including ourselves. We just went over to it because, again, for branding and email, it has a lot more opportunities to be on brand. And so we'll have to work with our team member and see how it does. I wonder if it has that like pre-built in like Android fix it, but I'll report back once we find out.
Yeah, please. Yeah, let me know how that works because that is a big conversation that we've been having internally at Brave and Maiden, is whether or not we're going to move to Klaviyo, because it is more expensive than MailChimp, but I think it's worth it if you don't have to deal with the headaches like that. And there's other things that we can talk about in a future episode about the things that I'm not loving MailChimp. But anyways, they did their job, but it's just a little. Anyways, I digress.
Well, that's where we, again, kind of started. How do you modernize your brand and stay up with the times? You have to continue to invest, and whether that's with technology or branding. So again, like MailChimp also needs to invest in what they're offering their customers. They're hearing that there's needs out there unmet. And so if they don't modernize what they're offering, then their customers are going to go find something else. So it is related to what we talked about.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, make it easy to to buy from you, make it easy to find your products. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reduce friction wherever you can.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, Katy and Tamara, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so happy to have talked to you about this, and we'll have you back on the podcast soon to talk about more stuff because you and we could all just yap for hours. Before we sign off, could you tell people how to find you, how to work with you, how to hire you, and if you have anything special going on that you want to talk about, please share that.
Yeah. Well, you can find us on our website, storystrategies, plural.com. And on Instagram and LinkedIn, same at. And that's another, we could go down a real wormhole. Likelystory.com was taken, and so it's better to go shorter, but here we are.
But we do offer strategy. And then, our general inbox is hello@likelystorystrategies, plural.com. And yes, one day when we know, we'll hit it out of the park for a big client. When they ask what they can get us, it will be to buy lss.com. And that will be the best gift. So anybody listening out there, if you're looking to gift us something, lss.com would be wonderful.
Yeah. Please and thank you.
Yes, indeed. I love that. I will include all the things that you shared today in the show notes, as well as your contact information. So you all can find that at winemarketingfieldguide.com. And then, we'll get that all set up. So thank you so much. I love talking to you. You're amazing.
Ditto.
And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Yay.
Me too. I have an idea. See,
Yes.
Here we go again. Can't wait.
Oh my gosh. Tell me more.